let's create our query. This was a little bit of a challenge as I was thinking through this morning. So I'm going to go back to my view controller. So click here and choose view controller, and we're going to go into our show matches. So I'm going to create a couple of variables that will determine the state of these things. So we have to do it in our for loop as we're going through each data item, and that'll also process things a little bit quicker. So we're going to create a variable. I'm going to call it Senate, and it's going to be a type Boolean, and it's going to equal switch switch Senate dot is on. So it is on is a Boolean property of the switch. Is either true or false. Determines the state that switch is in. And then I'm simply going to copy that line of code, and we're going to paste a few times here. We're going to change Senate to house and switch Senate to switch house. And there, if you have an N in house, that is incorrect. Okay, and we'll paste again. This one's going to be let's just call it dem. And this will be switch dem is on. We'll do rep. And then other. And I also want to have a variable for that text field. So I'm going to just call that one home. Var home is going to be a type string, and it's going to equal txt state dot text, and I want to change that to uppercase here as well. Make sure as we're doing matches, everything's, you don't have to worry about the case sensitivity. So we're going to use those 6 variables in some if statements to determine whether the instance in our array matches the criteria the user selected. I'm going to have one more variable because I want to keep track of how many matches there are. So create a variable, call it results. It's going to be a type integer, and it's going to equal 0 initially. And then my comment here is going to be check if instance matches criteria. Okay, so we're going to go through XYZ in members. And I'm going to take this TV results. I'm going to cut it and move it outside. We'll come back and use a little bit later. I'm going to just move it outside the loop. I'm going to create another variable here. Let's call this one match. It's going to be a type bool, and it's going to equal true to start. First we're going to look at is the state. So if home, go ahead and some challenges here. Okay, so if home equals quote quote. So if it's null, they didn't put any state in, we want to show everybody. Or home is equal to XYZ dot state. And I'll put that whole thing just in parentheses. and then curly brackets. So we're going to start by looking at the state value that they inputted. Then, if it matches, if that's a good value, we want to look at the other criteria. And I'm going to create a series. You can do a bunch of if statements here inside the ifs, nested if. I'm going to use ternaries. So my first ternary is going to be match equals. Now, match at this point is true by default. If it's not the state, it's not a state match, or they're not looking for everybody. Actually, before we do this, so I don't forget, I'm going to add an else clause here, and we're going to set match equal to false. So if I put in Alabama as the state, it should only show Alabama, and everything else would be considered false. Equals XYZ. Take our house value. And if that does not equal S, and Senate is false, we're going to do a not Senate. So I don't want a not equals here. I want it equals S and not Senate. Then we're going to set this to false. So if the member is a senator, but Senate was not chosen, we're going to set match equal to false. Otherwise, we'll just leave it as match. So I could have written this, just for those who are following along at home. We could have said XYZ. Actually, I'm going to copy this. We said false, else, match. So this one statement replaces that. So you can do it whichever way you like. Oops. And I don't want if false here. I want match equals false and match. Actually, we just do nothing basically. Remain. Match would remain. So actually, in this case, I really don't need the else. We just do it as an if statement. I like the readability of the ternaries. So we're going to do the same thing here for House, or for the House of Representatives. So I'm going to copy, and I want this to be an R. So when I was doing this earlier, I put this as an H. And it took me about 20 minutes to realize why the House switch would not work, because H is not part of my data values. It's either S or R according to the Excel spreadsheet. We're going to do the same thing for the other three switches. So here we're going to say party. And I'll set this to rep. We'll do a D. And this should be dem. And then for the other, if XYZ party does not equal R and XYZ party does not equal D, and not other. Okay, so up here in home. TXT state.txt needs to be an optional. There's no guarantee there's anything there. So we need to unwrap it with a question mark. Okay, I thought we just took care of that. They also wants to add a exclamation after uppercase. Oh, and we should probably, these are not going to change, so we're going to get warnings. Let's change these to constants. Sorry about that. Since it's a constant, I think we can actually get rid of the exclamation mark there. Nope, guess not.
Isn't results going to change?
Oh, yes, it will. Thank you. Leave that as a variable. After our end of our if, or actually end of our loop, let's get rid of, oh, someone leave one thing in here. Okay, so after our if-else structure, we now want to see, did this member of Congress pass the criteria? Is there the match value still set to true? So each of these items basically sets it to false if it doesn't match. So now we can do a if match. And you can say if match is equal to true, but it's a Boolean expression, so either true or false. So I just leave that part off. It'll evaluate the true or false. So here we're going to take our TV results and paste that in. And then we're going to increment results. So results plus equals 1. And I'm seeing a little warning here that we didn't use house. I should change the Senate to house because we do need to use it. Okay. So after our loop then, we should show our results. We're going to put the number of matches in that label. So LBL matches dot text equals. I was going to say showing. We'll interpolate results. And the word matches. Questions?
Oh, I have a question. Why is the show matches function not just in the switch changed action, since that's the only thing in there so far?
So we have it up here as well. So when we change the switches, it's gonna run all this again. We're gonna add another function, another action for our text box. So we change the text, that'll also change it. So anytime we make any of those changes, this should run. We're going to test it though first, just with the switches here. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks.
Okay. So we're using it twice here. And that's the reason I didn't put this inside this code, because we'll actually have a third call once we create the action for our text box. And then actually we'll have a fourth one, we create the action for our button to show everything. So let's just test this portion of it. And I'm simply going to look at just the sender. So I'm going to turn the house switch off. And now we're seeing 100 matches, all senators. And we can do the opposite and look at just the house. So we know that works. 441 members for the house. If I just want to look at just the Republicans, 199 matches, do the same thing for the Democrats. 237 matches. So that all seems working. Let's check the other here as well. Let's turn those two off. And so we get 5 non-Democrat, non-Republican matches in our houses, or our house. If we add in the Senate, that moves up to 7. So that all seems to be pretty responsive at this point. Now let's add in the state and then the button to show all. Stop running. Going to hide the navigator panel. Put this over a little bit. So let's take our state and let's create an action for the state. And we're going to call this state changed. It's going to be a UI text field. The event we want, though, is I had to play around with this a little bit. I think it's editing changed. Let's see, make a note here. Okay, we'll see if that works. I had to play around with which one actually triggered this appropriately. And I think editing change was the one that worked best. Okay, we can always come back and change that if we need to. That might be a good lesson to learn how to do that as well. So here, we're going to show matches. And let's just test that. And so if we come in here, we type in an AZ, that works. So we see just the Congress members from Arizona. We could do a CA. Oops. There's California, New York. So that seems to work. And if we just remove everything, we're back to all of our matches. So let's make sure that works now with the different buttons. So I'm just going to go back to AZ. And if I just want to see the Democrats in Congress from Arizona, we have 6 matches. If I'm looking at just the House, we have 5. If we go Republicans, we have 4 Republicans. Add in the Senate, we have 5. And we have no others. Let's go back to our program. Let's stop running and let's code our show all button. And I'm just going to refer to this as the name is going to be show all. UI button, touch up inside, and we'll connect. So one thing I found when I was playing around with this, if you have your program edit the text of the text field, it does not trigger that editing changed. So I want to start by setting txt state.text equals quote, quote. We're going to clear anything that's there. And then we'll set each of our switches. Is on property. True. That should be a lowercase t. And it's going to simply copy and paste 5 times. And all we're going to do is change the switch names. So we're turning everything on. And then once again, I'm going to call show matches. And let's test it. So let's narrow this down a little bit. We'll do Arizona Democrats in the House, and then we do show all. And it shows us all the results. So that seems to work as well.
If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the iOS app development cohort playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos that I create, you can click my picture up in the top right and subscribe to the channel.